Olá, nerds de plantão. Já começou o negócio aqui rapidinho, já tá rolando. E eu vou... Opa! Eu acho que o seu tá entrando aqui o link.
Thank you, Melissa.
Já tá rolando aqui já o painel com todo mundo em casa e a gente tá no cantinho ali, ó, tá bonitinho. Mas rapidinho, o Vini, eu vou só pegar um outro device aqui para eu colocar para eu ver que senão vai atrapalhar a nossa transmissão. É rápido. Vai batendo um papo aí com o pessoal. Não foge não, Vini. Foge não, Vini.
Fala, galera.
Tell us all about all the stuff we've been doing.
Yeah, and for all humanities majors writing about science, you tell us what we got wrong.
Thank you so much, both of you. Next up is Troy Semper.
Estamos aqui, vamos acompanhar.
I'm Troy. I'm a bioengineer and a lifelong science enthusiast. I've been volunteering with the Fleet Science Center for years now. They do a lot of great work around San Diego, getting the message of science out there to people. My research involves evolution and genetic engineering. I manipulate the DNA of bacteria and then see what mutations they get that let them acquire new powers.
Olha o café.
And I'm also a big physics enthusiast, so any sort of space or quantum physics questions I would love to chip in on as well.
Thank you, Troy. And then we have Craig Tiddley.
I am none of those things Troy is. I'm a writer and one of the producers of the show. Also a giant fan of the show myself, and a fan of science and the Fleet Science Center.
Preciso saber se está saindo o som.
Thank you, Craig. Next up is Elizabeth Henstridge.
I'm Elizabeth Henstridge. I play Gemma Simmons on Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Simmons is a biochemist and very clever.
Não sei se está saindo o som da transmissão. E eu não tô vendo, cara. Que bom.
Including the people I actually know personally, which says a lot for the caliber of the panel, you know.
Next up, we have Anila.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Aí é o elenco inteiro, né?
I am a scientist at the Salk Institute for Biological Studies, and my training is in physiology and metabolic disease. So I basically study diseases like diabetes and the impact of nutrition and exercise on the human body. But I also create mutant animal models to study human disease. So I create mutant mice and rats, and mutation in humans also very much interests me. And that's why I'm here today. I'm very excited to talk to you about the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Thank you, Anila. Next up, we have Jeffrey.
Hi, Jeffrey Bell. I'm a executive producer, writer, and one of the co-showrunners of and have always also been a big lay person who loves science. I've been involved with the Science and Entertainment Exchange for years.
Gente, eu tô só me resolvendo aqui que eu esqueci de pegar uma segunda tela para colocar para ouvir junto. E eu não tô ouvindo o que o pessoal do Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. está falando. Mas rapidinho que eu já...
Thank you, Joel. And last but certainly not least, we have Virginia.
Thanks, Andrea, and thanks for the invitation. I'm a professor in cognitive science at UC San Diego and associate director of the Jalisco Data Science Institute, also at UC San Diego. I study machine learning, brain-computer interfaces, and vision. And my connection to the field is my graduate student, Eric Morgan, and I helped Ashanti and Paul to get the visual.
simplesmente esse aí é o painel de fechamento do...
Thank you so much, Virginia. Thank you all for the wonderful intro. And with that, I have questions.
Não, é que assim, para fazer a transmissão, Vitão, eu preciso de duas telas. Uma tela que eu tô com, que aí eu assisto o YouTube junto com vocês, e uma tela que eu transmito. A tela que eu estou transmitindo tá beleza. O problema é que eu não consigo ouvir o que eles estão falando, o que eles estão conversando.
Eu vou procurar meu fone, que eu não sei onde tá.
The answer is with a lot of really smart people. You know, we have a writer's room of diverse, talented people, and it really grows out of character. We started off, I think, with a handful of very interesting characters, and it's really the stories that will put those people in conflict, in peril. How many times can Fitz and Simmons be pulled apart? But really it comes out of character. You look at what the character wants and needs, and what happens if you apply pain, and what happens if you put them in certain circumstances, and that's the place where we start. I mean, other writers, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I always loved about working on the show is that we all try to entertain ourselves.
Calma aí, gente, que eu estou caçando algum lugar para assistir também junto, porque eu não estou ouvindo
Aquele que você tinha pego.
Então, é que assim, eu preciso de outra tela, Vini. Não dá para me jogar no Note aqui, que senão dá ruim. Você tá conseguindo ouvir?
Eu estou ouvindo mais eles do que a gente.
Então, mas eu queria ouvir eles, né?
Eu não estou ouvindo a gente.
Falando ali.
And it'll be even like on our lunch break, we're talking about some cool articles somebody read, some cool idea that somebody heard, and then
não, ruim é que a Comic Con eles disponibilizam mais tarde, né? Aí tem até legenda tudo bonitinho. Mas
esse aí teoricamente seria ao vivo. Calma aí que eu vou fazer uma segunda saidinha aqui, 2 segundos.
Like everybody bringing their own fun ideas into the room, and sometimes the stories just come out of that.
And sometimes, you know, it coming from character, it being a science fiction show that allows you to address character things in a way that other people can't. So a lot of people can write about, you know, a couple having an argument. We get to put that couple inside of an alien computer.
Agora eu vou colocar 2 fones de ouvido, que vai ser uma beleza. Tá aparecendo o Galvão Bueno aqui. Um conversando com você e outro ouvindo lá o que o pessoal tá falando, cara. Na verdade, na última que eu fiz com 2 notebooks. E esse eu esqueci, cara, totalmente.
Eu até consigo fazer exatamente isso que você está fazendo também, mas o meu fone do celular é Bluetooth, então se ele perder o sinal, já era.
Entendi.
You said that
Olha o que eu vou fazer.
Science plays a role in that sometimes ideas from the real world find their ways in the show. And
aqui, como eu te mostrei, tá tudo em paz. Se chegar alguém, eu dou uma sumidinha para atender. Então, o pessoal aí do vídeo não liga, não. Se eu começar a perguntar se outras coisas de alguém, é porque eu tô trabalhando.
Aí se dá aquela famosa mutada rápida aí, mas...
giant Marvel intellectual properties that we could wave and say, look, there's Iron Man. And so instead we could have, here's some really cool tech, or here's some really neat.
Então, pelo que eu entendi, cara, isso não está sendo ao vivo, tá?
Não, nunca é.
Eles estão disponibilizando aí. Agora já tô...
É aquilo que eu te falei, a Comic Con mesmo, ela vai postar um vídeo quando acabar aqui, o tempo da live, que não é live, né? Aí eles já vão postar com legenda, tudo bonitinho.
O nosso aqui é que assim, eu me inscrevi numa... O porquê do Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Eu consegui escrever o Vai Nerds aí para ter a primeira mão aí, então, junto com outros veículos aí. Então aí a gente tá... A gente tá fazendo a transmissão em primeira mão. Legal, cara.
A gente tem até que achar bonitinho.
Some of them made up. I have the feeling, I'm not a scientist, so it could be that they're all real or not. I have the feeling that gravitonium is not a real element yet, but we'll see about that when we talk to the scientists in a second. But how, Elizabeth, how did you kind of get into the role of the scientist? Like,
Eles estão falando o seguinte, ó, que eu estou pegando aqui já um pouquinho já. Eles estão falando como for trabalhar aí, o lado cientista dela. Essa é a... Não é a Gena. A Gena tá ali. Ah, tá ali, ó. Ela perguntou sobre...
my stunts were the
jargon.
Mostrar o lado cientista da Gema. Ela não é cientista, né?
Não, isso é legal.
The problem and then later explaining the solution, which were kind of both science-based. So it was just really fun because you get to...
O cientista mesmo era o Fitz. Ela era médica.
Ela é médica.
Discovery and then the discovery of the solution.
Something que eu tô
anxious about.
4 anos, sei lá.
So passionate about something and believes in something.
Acabou a energia aqui.
Acabou a energia?
So as an actor, that was really cool.
Eu não sei nem como
Did you ever, in your family, see
Está no escuro, voltou.
family members in action? Do you know, like, did you know what a lab looked like before you went into the role?
Yeah, so I was
É só em live mesmo para acontecer essas coisas, né?
3 sciences and drama as my final exams before university, and my mom, she tried real hard to get me to that medical school, and so I had all sorts of work experience and watched operations.
Na verdade aí o que a gente tem aí são 1, 2, 3, 4 pessoas de repórteres. Então eles estão fazendo as perguntas. Os três aqui, o que está acima da gente, os 2 do lado são produtores. A Gema, essa do lado da Gema, quem que é? Você lembra, Vinícius?
Somebody here is creating new
Eu lembro
devices, so I
vagamente.
think you're okay.
That is correct. So when we look at the characters that Fitz and Simmons play in the show, I love it because they come from different fields. So we've got Simmons, we've got Fitz, the engineer. But they're all seem to be very versed in so many more science fields than just their particular fields. When I look at the scientists, how is that for you? I mean, how much knowledge of your specific field do you have?
E tinha acho que uma senadora, alguma coisa assim, que era contra ele. Só que o irmão dela também era.
Que o de baixo é aquele ator que faz o robô. Debaixo da Gema.
O personagem que apareceu já na 5ª temporada, né? Enoch, né? Assim.
O Enoch.
One is a sentient machine, and one survived 4,722 hours on the planet. So, nothing to point to you, Anila, but not just any biochemist could also pull a bullet out of somebody, or MacGyver some instrument in just a few hours. But I believe that Simmons can. So it's easy enough to suspend that belief just because of who she is. So it doesn't bother me on this show for sure.
I definitely have no problem with biochemistry.
Nossa, compararam ela com o MacGyver, velho. Cara, ela não é engenheira, ela é médica.
Ela era biomédica, mas de tanto que ela cresceu nessas temporadas, né? A convivência com o Fitz e tudo mais. Ela é quase uma MacGyver mesmo.
Mas o...
machine learning. But even if you're narrow, I think nowadays many scientists are working in teams. So you have your specialty, but you have to be able to communicate at least at some level, which is...
Eu pensei que eles iam falar mais voltado à nona temporada, a 7ª temporada, a última temporada.
Yeah, I would say scientists nowadays probably have a much better grasp of fields they're not actively working in than ever in the past, just because of the internet. Like scientists are naturally inquisitive people, and so I literally study physics for fun in my free time because I can, and you can just look it up on the internet. And the multidisciplinarity of science and all these big team projects that are happening nowadays does require you to, even if you're a biologist, you might need to be familiar with artificial intelligence and machine learning, because that's going to be applied to your data sets to extract valuable insight.
I just love that you can use the word data sets in a sentence and it makes sense.
I know, it's so good.
I use it all the time.
Come on over.
Yeah, like you were saying, you can go look up so much on the internet. And I think that is both an amazing and a very dangerous thing for us writers. Of like, we can go look up stuff and we're like, oh, we can find an article and read it like for 30 minutes about something. Like, okay, we can write a scene about this now. And I think sometimes we're like, yeah, we get overconfident, and we can. It'd probably be better if we actually go and talk to the scientists and figure out the nuances and stuff. But
sometimes it's a rewrite at midnight when you need new pages at 8
like,
a.m.
we need a science term. A paper where we can find some sort of cool term that we can use.
When in doubt, we throw quantum entanglements at everything.
That's
There was a whole season where quantum entanglement got us out of all kinds of problems. And I noticed we weren't the only show. It seemed like any science fiction show, any space show, they were talking about quantum entanglement. I thought, well, we'll go down that path.
You didn't have the budget to have a scientist on retainer at 4 o'clock in the morning?
Well, we do have, like I said, we have this. The Science Entertainment Exchange has been fantastic, and they've hooked us up with scientists over the years. We can send long, detailed questions early on when we gave
Só falando aí pro pessoal, o produtor aí, ele tá falando que eles fazem muita pesquisa científica.
The limitations of that and what could he cook, because he had a figment of Simmons happening as he was going forward. And so we talked with somebody about that. We talked with my friend Jordan Evans at JPL, someone I met through Exchange. Talked with him, we were trying to figure out how old the monolith was and how do you date something that's older than the Earth that predates carbon dating. And so finding out fun little details like that hopefully will be enough that people kind of go, sure, it sounds great.
At least find a way. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for a lot of the medical things, we'd have a rep on set. So
comenta pouquinho sobre o Enoch aí, falando da participação do Enoch.
So she was there to make sure that it would be how it was in a hospital or, a field hospital or something. That was really useful.
I'm glad that so many resources.
A doctor. So sometimes I tried to talk to her about the medical stuff and try and get input for how close it was. And we always do as close as we can to what is true. And then sometimes if the story is just a little bit better the other way.
Yeah.
It is amazing how many times science as James said, there's an assistant in the room and somebody will come in with something, an idea, and the assistant will immediately type it up and it goes up on the big screen. We'll watch a YouTube or watch a science clip. And it's amazing how many of those have inspired stories and tech that's come out of it.
I find that highly fascinating. And I want to delve a little bit into actually some of the science concepts. And I want to start with the Inhumans, if we can. Do you all from the Agents team have your favorite Inhuman other than Daisy? We all love Daisy. I mean, we love all of them actually as a fan. I like all the characters. But what was the one that maybe was the most challenging to write and to come up with powers and make it believable? Was there something that was challenging about that, or is it just in the superhero world so common these days that?
Well, sometimes what's challenging is when you've got someone with cool superpowers, how you don't just have them win the fight every time the same way. Because like Yo-Yo is an example where she's super fast. She walks in the room, zoom, zoom. She gets all the guns and the scene's over. Fun the first time you do it, but you wanted to have more than one move for 100 episodes.
No, it's actually a big problem. Yo-Yo is arguably the most powerful just because before you can throw a punch, you're dead. Before you need anything, you do it. And then Daisy, I mean, we've had episodes where, she's quaked entire forests down. And so, again, it's more fun to see her, fight that way. But the challenge is those fights would be over with a single shh, and she's done. So finding ways to justify why they don't always do it is really our biggest challenge.
Yeah, that makes sense. From a biological side, scientists, mutations.
Colocaram simplesmente o produtor em xeque aqui, né? Colocaram perguntando quem que ele achava mais forte, se a White Cake, né? A Daisy ou a Yo-Yo. Aí ele falou que a Yo-Yo ela é muito rápida, né? Ele poderia destruir muito rapidamente.
T's or C's all in a string and split into different chromosomes. And it's very equivalent to the ones and zeros of computer code. The specific sequence encodes information, and that leads to function, an organism functioning. And so it's almost limitless the things you can do with a creature with a particular DNA sequence. Like look at every living creature on Earth. All of that craziness was designed through random trial and error, and just trying to pass on their genes. So
põe no mute.
We change the letters of our code with genetic engineering and CRISPR and things like that. There's, you can do basically anything as long as it doesn't violate the laws of physics in terms of superpowers. So it's nice that nowadays shows try to have more sciencey explanations instead of just being like, oh, you got exposed to radiation and now you have superpowers.
Anila, you create mutant mice. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I think that in many ways, we don't realize just how amazing a model of human metabolism or human disease mice are. So mice are amazing. They're like a great partner for scientists. They're scientists' best friend because a lot of what we know about the medications and the disease process, we get that information from mice. So I will often look up or we will study mass genetic information that we're collecting from, for example, the Human Genome Project, and now a lot of the mutations that companies like 23andMe will be looking into. We'll find something that correlates with a certain type of disease or a trait. Like, for example, you have a mutation or a single change in a base of the DNA, as Troy was mentioning. And this correlates with something like this person.
Estão falando muito das curiosidades científicas do Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
And then I will create that mutation in the mouse to see
eu esperava outra coisa aí, mas é legal, cara, que eles mostram o interesse de pessoas com superpoderes. Já imagina só.
Non-mutant counterpart. So understanding why that happens might help us develop a drug that will act like the mutation. And then if you can use that drug in humans, you might help them prevent diabetes. So that's just a very simplified explanation of what mutant mice can help you achieve. But with respect to mutation, I think that we don't realize just how much natural mutation occurs in the population and how much of that actually does give you beneficial advantages in the case of humans and survival. There are often mutations that are detrimental, but some of them can be beneficial. But like Troy mentioned, you can't really defy the laws of physics. So, for example, I love the idea that Yo-Yo can move as fast as she does, but accelerating to that point might actually kill us. So once we achieve that speed, we could survive, but it's the acceleration that would make us probably melt. So yeah, I don't know if we can get a mutation on that yet, but other ones maybe.
Keep on working on it.
Pair with technology to help out, and maybe biological tissue can't sustain super high accelerations without.
Eles estão comentando muito o lado científico do Age of S.H.I.E.L.D, do lado o que você acharia dos mutantes, se fosse verdade.
Então, até tá no título aqui da videoconferência, né? Que eles realmente estão voltados pro lado científico. O que eu acho bem legal na Comic Con, porque eles estão fazendo vários vídeos assim, voltados em coisas científicas. Ontem mesmo eu estava vendo que tinha um vídeo, uma conferência voltada para engenheiros. Na Comic Con, uma conferência para
Mas e os caras não estão fugindo das perguntas, não, cara. Os caras estão respondendo.
Do you have in mind that you might influence the next generation of possible scientists?
Ninguém sai das perguntas.
First, no. Being a woman scientist isn't unusual.
Ó, só que olha do lado da Gema, o cara do lado da Gema. Olha o pôster que ele tem atrás
I
dele.
was very attracted to the role because she was
Eu só queria aquele pôster.
strong-willed and allowed me to.
Eu estava assistindo a conferência dos Novos Mutantes, né? Eles fizeram uma distribuição dos 7 modelos de pôster que eles apresentaram. Aí tinha que postar lá a hashtag e tal. Mas eu só preciso isso, eu adoro. Porque eu queria. Estavam muito bonitos.
Made me love it more. I want to do it more. I'm chatting with my friends about it, or you'd see people in cosplay would be in lab coats, and that just it made me realize how privileged I have been to be surrounded by.
Meu, o inglês dessa Gema é muito fácil de entender, cara.
Seen that represented
Ela
and so to be a part of that was really cool, and I'm glad that's why the interaction with fans is so, as an actor, it's just everything, because then you can take that back to work with you the next day and, have conversations with writers and go, somebody mentioned this thing, or what do we think about that? And being on a show for so long, we have the ability to read storylines or, like Charlotte was saying, read an article and it can be in the show. And so there's that conversation, I think, between the outside world and what's created that's really special.
I like that a lot. I like that so many people came up to you and say they like science more now than they have before. I think that's amazing. And it shows the power that stories have.
Yeah, and it's shown to be fun. I think a lot of schools don't have the resources to do crazy experiments every week in science, but sometimes you have to see it to be it. And I think the show helps to showcase science as something that's exciting and innovative and just for everybody, every character has some relation to science in the show, and it's just that resonated with people.
Yeah, sure, what resonated with me, that's for sure.
As someone who got into science because I was such a huge Star Trek nerd as a kid, I can see that carrying on through the generations, that there's a whole new set of people getting that inspiration from, Jack Kirby comics and this show. And I like
And it's not just the future generation. I think that roles like the one you play really do reinforce the passion and inspiration that current scientists have. As a female scientist in the field, it's just good to know that.
Eu pensei que eles iam ter rodada de pessoas conversando com eles, mas não tem essa rodada. Eu acho que só escolheram aí
because they look at us as helping the community and helping with progress, and that just makes everything so much more positive and effective. So I think that for current scientists, it's really important to see your depiction of science.
And I always wondered, and that might be a question for Virginia, is how much pop culture might influence what science is researching and doing, especially when we look at shows like S.H.I.E.L.D, where they come up with a framework, with a matrix, with a way to connect, to upload the brain into a virtual world. How much might you or your students have been influenced by pop culture?
That is a good question. I think there's a little bit of influence in research, but I think there's a lot of influence in our outreach. So
Legal, pergunta boa.
Many scientists will go into the public schools and get kids, especially girls and underrepresented minorities, get them interested in science. And one of the ways to do that is to, make it fun. And so we try to make it fun with brain-computer interface games, but you can also make it fun by bringing up science fiction. I mean, the kids love that stuff, and it's way more interesting than here's a diagram of the brain and this is here and here. But like here you can play with your brain, or here you can do something like what they do in, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Or anything that you can connect it to something that's fun and exciting for kids really helps in getting kids excited about science. And it's also fun for us. It's more fun for us to do that. So we go out, we do brain-computer interface games. The kids just love they can compete against each other, and they love that. And then we try to also teach them a little bit of, this is how the brain works in there, but they're mostly interested in the game. But I think it gets them excited and interested.
Most scientists I know were inspired, at least to some extent, by the media they consumed as children and science fiction and stuff. Because I remember seeing Harry Potter or reading it and being like, oh, that would be amazing if I could do magic, but that's not actually how the world works. And then the Ender's Game book, they have some plot point where someone is able to live far into the future because they flew him around close to light speed. And so time moved slower for him. And it was the same sort of thing where I was like, oh, they just made this up. That's not how the universe works. That could never happen. And then I'm inspired to look up time dilation. And that's a feature of the physics of our universe. And it's great when shows with all their crazy plot points will try to have a sciencey explanation. And then maybe someone's interest is piqued and they go look it up and they realize, oh my God, this is crazy. I want to learn more about this. Maybe I should spend my life researching this.
And crazy plot points, that brings me to season 5. I've been trying to watch little snippets of each of the season because, it's been a while for this panel. And season 5, boy, it throws me for a loop because there's so many points of going back in time, going forward in time, and going back in time. And then they're stuck maybe in a time loop. So we'll have to figure out. And then, of course, Enoch's character is in there. And I find Enoch's character very interesting because it is for me at least, it's kind of the intersection between an alien and the android robot world that we just came from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. As an actor, can I ask you, Joel, how is it to play a machine when acting, as I understand it, is reacting and emotions, but as a machine, you're not supposed to have any?
I didn't necessarily have a formula when I stepped into this that I could apply. I remember on episode 422, the director was Billy Gerhardt, I think. Mm-hmm. And I said, "What can you tell me?" And he went like this.
So Billy.
I was like, and luckily, there wasn't a lot for me to have to dig in to do for that episode, but it was, whatever it was, it ended up working. But in subsequent, in season 5, episode 5, the word that stuck out for me that helped me the most was sentient chronicon, because there's a sense of feeling in this guy, but clearly, there's no human emotion there. And I think what it was is that anytime I, as an actor, would have an emotional response, I would always, because I'm an observer as a chronicon, I'm an observer, I would always turn that into curiosity and being intrigued and like, what's this about? Instead of responding to the emotion as a human.
Cara, o cara fazer alienígena chamado alienígena, não, uma interface inumana, robô, um Chronicon. Ele não sabia nem como fazer, cara. Muito engraçado ele explicando.
I could see that. And then we had the mainframe and the robots and the androids in the story. I was wondering, Virginia, how do we see technology advancing in that field with machine learning? There's, many more algorithms. There's Siri now that helps us with any question we might have. Where do you see the world going in that respect?
So we're nowhere near where is portrayed in the shows. The shows are much more exciting in that way. Machine learning is very good at very specific problems, and even in fact better than humans in some very well-defined problems. So, do these images show cancer or not?
Ela perguntou sobre um pouquinho sobre o referente ao
face recognition,
a mainframe, alguma coisa mais voltado para machine learning. É bem interessante isso.
Humans, sometimes better than humans. Again, it depends on how restricted. Where we're really missing and where the next generation of AI is going to have to go is where for the systems to start being able to integrate more context and also being more, it's called explainable, so you can actually understand what they're doing and why and how. So right now, most of the training is you have a whole bunch of images is easy. So if you're doing computer vision, you have a whole bunch of images of one class, you have a bunch of images of another class, and however many other classes, and you have to like say, this is a cat, this is a dog, this is a horse. And you do like gazillions of those. And the network then can do a really good job at seeing cats. But that's not really how humans learn, and that's not how the androids learn in the TV shows. That's much more natural and also much more transferable. So you learn cats and dogs, and then someone shows you one horse, and now new other horses, you can still say that's a horse. But the computer systems are not quite like that. They're much more brittle, they're much more specialized. And so where the field is moving very slowly is to be more general, to be able to abstract ideas basically, and also to, one thing that humans do is we develop our own questions, right? I mean, especially as scientists, as writers, you have creativity as well. We come up with our own questions and new questions, and that is really totally missing from the AI and machine learning systems of today. They're told what to learn, and then they can do a great job. They do pattern recognition, they do a great job, but the ability to come up with the new problem, like in the show, when Ada realizes that there's this conflict between these two goals, and then coming up with realizing there's a conflict, that's actually doable in some AI systems. You can put rules in and they can say, okay, these are inconsistent. But then actually coming up with a solution around that's way beyond what any of the artificial systems currently can do.
So no robot overlords anytime soon. Okay.
Well,
I'm somewhat relieved.
And this is nowhere near my field of expertise, but since we're talking about the framework, I just wanted to thank the writers and Ian for the doctor and framework fits. That was A+ storyline.
Thank you.
You have fun with that.
Yes. We all have fun with that.
Apart from me.
Yeah, you kind of got a little tortured there.
What about, speaking of the framework, just a show of hands, because I don't think we want to go down this hole, but from all the scientists, are we living in a simulation? Yes or no?
Possible. I mean, your conscious experience is, to the best of our understanding, according to quantum field theory,
Eu achando bem legal aqui na conversa deles, que eu tô vendo, eles estão lembrando várias coisas da tecnologia que os agentes usavam ao longo da série. Né? Eles falavam também de frame, e tudo mais. É coisa que a gente visava para, sei lá, 2020, mas 2020 do jeito que tá. Deixa para daqui uns anos.
We don't know how to upload to a framework or anything, but in theory that is possible. And so, who knows? We could be.
O que eles vão usar daqui para frente. Eles usam muita coisa, né, cara? Tá bem legal.
Right now, like the fourth grader's playing SimCity and gets bored and just turns on all
Coisa
the
de nerd
disasters all at
mesmo.
once at the end.
Bem bate-papo. Eles estão botando muita coisa. Machine learning, inteligência artificial. Meu, é umas coisas que você vê, tá ouvindo muito hoje em dia, né?
E Agents, na verdade, sempre foi uma série que explorava o lado tecnológico da Marvel, né? Vale lembrar lá na quarta temporada que teve um pouco de misticismo, mas ainda assim eles usavam muito a tecnologia em cima disso.
Sim.
Probably a 3D world, but if it was a 4D or a 5D world and we were just able to sense a 3D, we wouldn't know any different. And so you can't know what you don't know.
And these are the scientific observations that terrify me.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. But there's a show in there somewhere.
Actually, I think the show Devs, which was on Hulu recently, was a great science show. I don't know what you scientists thought of it or if you saw it, but yeah, you should check it out. And it goes to questions of free will versus determinism, and whether we have choice or not, and they're getting into quantum predictions and everything, and they use the word quantum a lot to make it sexy. But I thought it was a terrific show and asked a lot of really provocative, interesting questions. I don't get paid to reference that. I just love it.
I always enjoy a good reference, especially in the quarantine. I find myself with some time to watch more TV, which is good because there's so many great shows out there. We're actually coming close to the end of our 45 minutes already, which I can't believe because it doesn't feel like 45 minutes already. But that's what my iPhone says. So, but we have a little bit more time. What did I not ask that you really wanted to share with our audience today, either from the agent side or from the science side? What is one point, especially agents is coming to an end, and I'm really sad about it. I will miss it a lot. Any wisdom parting words from the agents team to all the fans out there of the show?
No wisdom. We're not wise people. But we are grateful. And I would say the thing that we're saying every year that we come back, which is many more than we expected, is to thank the fans for their support and their love. The fact that they care about Fitz and Simmons and Coulson and Daisy and Mac and May and Yo-Yo is why we're still here. And it's really fun, and it's sad we can't go to Comic-Con and do that again. But watching fans in line, either young Asian American women who are going to Ming and Chloe and saying, "Thank you, I want to be like you," or people going to scientists like Gemma, or people who go to Joel and say, "I'd like to be a robot like you." It really is spectacular. And without the fans, we wouldn't be here, and so we're grateful for that.
A gente já está para terminar aqui. Já terminou aqui a...
Scientists, any parting words for current scientists, for the scientists who don't even know they want to be scientists in the future?
3 minutinhos, eles estão falando de cientista, estão falando da...
Shows don't is showing a team of scientists, even if they didn't get character names or lines.
Estão agradecendo cientistas, estão agradecendo os engenheiros, que mostrando... É aquilo que a gente falou, né? Foi muito mais voltado para o lado real do negócio do que a série. Eu estava esperando outra coisa. Vou falar para você.
Série. Até porque, se não me engano, é a última temporada, né?
É a última temporada, é o fim, acabou.
Um papo de desfecho. Mas eles resolveram fazer um papo mais nerd. Acho que todo mundo faz bem nessa live. Cadê o papo?
And in the acting world.
And in the world in general.
Mas não deixa de ser interessante.
Não, é bem interessante mesmo.
Well, I'm really sorry that our time has just flown by
na
so
verdade,
quickly, I have so many more questions
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, eu acho que a Marvel em si não teve um painel só dela. Ela fez algumas coisas separadas. Teve a nova série lá de terror, que a gente
one more time,
mais
and
pra
I can't wait
frente.
to watch the
Os Thrones, se não me engano.
seasons of it. For anybody who stumbled across this,
os papos da Marvel mesmo, eles ficaram separados.
know Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. yet? My question
Inclusive
is
da
why.
DC.
Also get on it, watch it now, it is amazing. Maybe you came to the panel because you were interested in science. Thank you for that. If you weren't interested in science, I hope you are now.
A última repórter aqui, ela falou que ela achou muito rápido o painel, e ela teria milhões de perguntas para fazer de cientista, sobre lado científico, tudo.
The Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. website, if you are
Ela adorou ver a Gema no coisa aqui,
and thank
no painel.
all of you panelists for your time. I
E tá agradecendo a todos.
And honor for me that my fangirl moment, I haven't quite gotten over it yet when I look at the screen, so I apologize. Thank you very much for all of you for joining us.
Thank you. This was so fun.
Zerou mesmo. Foi aí o painel do Zeramos aí o painel da Marvel of S.H.I.E.L.D. Aí, Vini, primeiro painel que a gente participa da Comic Con San Diego.
Já falei, a gente tem até crachazinho, a gente pode até estampar o crachazinho depois no vídeo.
Agradeço aí, pessoal, que acompanhou a gente aí. Obrigado, Vinícius, aí, por estar acompanhando. Foi legal, cara, assim, que eles exploraram uma coisa bem totalmente diferente do que a gente estava esperando, mas eu achei um pouquinho decepcionante. Eu esperava mais, eu esperava eu estava esperando uma coisa mais legal aí, mais bacaninha, mas é vivendo e aprendendo. Imagina se você tem essa ainda bem que a gente tem em casa, imagina se tem essa decepção no painel, né?
Aí nos 5 primeiros minutos eu ia sair fora e ia andar pelos corredores.
Mas você acompanhou aí a dos Novos Mutantes, você falou que foi legal. Os caras até fizeram piadinha com a...
As piadinhas até agora eu lembro e começo a rir, né?
Eles fazendo as piadinhas com o negócio do lançamento, né?
Os caras me perdoaram. Durante a conferência, né? O próprio diretor e os atores não perdoavam isso. Alguém comentava, mas será que é mês que vem mesmo que sai o filme? Aí os caras começavam a onda. Aí, dentro das promoções que eles fizeram na conferência, teve um momento que eles falaram, quem completar essas hashtags aqui vai estar concorrendo a uma premiere com a gente. Aí o diretor falou, só não esqueçam das máscaras. Aí a menina que faz a magia, ela virou, mas é mês que vem mesmo a estreia? A gente não... semana que vem, na outra, essa pessoa vai assistir o filme com a gente mesmo? Eles começaram a tirar onda, se vai ter essa premiere ou não.
Isso é legal, cara. Isso aí é bacana. Aí sim, aí você vê o mundo da Comic Con. Mas aquilo que eu falei, pelo menos aqui eles comentaram muita coisa assim uma coisa realista, né? Machine Learning, inteligência artificial, fizeram umas comparações, perguntaram do fato de colocar uma médica, de um arquiteto, do engenheiro.
Sim, e a médica está fazendo o trabalho todo, né? Ela virou cientista do nada na série. Ela começou como médica, biomédica, e virou cientista mesmo. Da convivência e tudo mais. Mas eu estou olhando aqui alguns outros vídeos. Essa Comic Con, como acabou sendo em casa, né? Eles focaram muito em explorar o lado das ciências nas conferências. Principalmente porque eles estão fazendo uma homenagem a Star Trek. Tem vários vídeos relacionados a Star Trek nessa Comic Con. Então,
isso aí a gente pode até pegar o próximo sábado aí fazer o que a gente achou da Comic Con San Diego at Home. Vini, brigadão aí por ajudar aí, por participar. Eu sei que você tá... Para mim, você estava de férias, mano. Não achei que você estaria em pleno...
Todo mundo no trabalho me pergunta, você está de férias? Porque eu vim bastante trabalhar esse mês, mas mais os fins de semana. Mas sim, eu tô de férias. Até dia 31 eu ainda tô de férias.
Mas beleza, brigadão aí por ajudar a gente aí. Gente, lembrando aí, siga o canal, compartilha, dá aquele like. Provavelmente umas 8h30, 9 horas, eu estarei dando início aí a um streamzinho de Last of Us 2. Quem quiser acompanhar lá na Twitch TV. Tá bom, gente? Obrigadão aí, Vinícius. Vou parar aqui a transmissão. Valeu. Vai, Nerds. Mano,